order the meeting of the zoning bylaw committee for June 28th, 2023. Roll call attendance.
Clark Brewer here.
Tom Callahan here.
Cassie Maltesta here.
Okay, and Judith Cutler and Cassandra Thayer. Thank you for all being here. So I was going to welcome Mike Dickey. He might show up late, but he couldn't make tonight's meeting. But if you hadn't heard, the zoning board of appeals volunteered him to be a representative on this committee while he was on vacation, and he has graciously accepted. And I think that the select board put him on this committee last night. But he said,
Mike was on the planning board for 5 years.
yeah, he was both a planning board member and now is a zoning board member.
A corporate attorney, and he worked for a couple of banks. He might be working for a bank now too.
We won't hold that against him.
But my experience was that he was really excellent at just the kind of stuff that we're doing, what words mean, and trying to perfect the language that will be used more easily with his sharing his expertise. So I think it's a good choice, even if it came under less than ideal circumstances.
Yeah, you can't be
Is he the new kid on the block or something? Has he got?
Well, he's been on ZBA for a couple of years.
Yeah, I'm just glad the zoning board is back involved in this because it helps for the communication later when we get to the vetting process right before town meeting. So hopefully he'll join us before we finish. All I have forwarded to him is what Judge, your update that we're going to discuss tonight.
Okay.
I didn't bombard him.
That was more the workshop kind of thing.
Yeah, I didn't bombard him with all the stuff. I will
Right.
bring him up to speed slowly on some other stuff. But as far as the other parts of our agenda, Dave isn't here. If you watched on Facebook, he's had a great trip to Qatar, and now he's in Egypt visiting family, and he's having a great time. Dave has been working with the Alternative Energy Committee on Articles 19 and 20, and he's also taken on looking at an impact fee bylaw, and I gave him a few examples of other towns. So hopefully we'll get that ready. So I mean, looking ahead to the fall, obviously we're focusing on 4. I would like to have 19 and 20 done and get it out of the way.
We need 5 done. We absolutely have to have 5 done with 4. It doesn't work otherwise.
Well, yeah, that's going to be, all right. That's kind of difficult. That's going to be difficult, but let's say, with the summer, I can already see things slowing down. The planning board has no business. We're pretty much going to take the summer off after our next meeting because we got nothing going on. So this committee, no excuses for Clark and I. We have lots of free time to have these meetings.
Okay.
But anyway, we'll go over that. The 3 surveys we put out on accessory dwellings, short-term rentals, and the harbor rezoning are all out there. I don't know where they are because I looked at the town website a few minutes ago and couldn't find them, but I know Justin has sent them out. So interesting to see if we get some feedback. But going on to item 6, when I met with the select board a couple of weeks ago, they were okay on us doing studies. We have to find the money. Obviously, there is monies that we do have at our disposal. And talking about Article 5.
Can I ask a question for the surveys? Is that something that we can all share with friends and family as well, or should it just stick to the website?
Sure you can.
Do you just reach out? Is it a PDF?
Reach out to Justin. He's got them on Survey Monkey. I don't know how you access
I should be able to send them to you, Cassie.
Yeah,
I'll write myself a note to send them to you.
Just make sure they're town residents.
Yeah, no, of course. But it's like
your business partners who don't live here, I really don't care.
No, believe me, I'm not sending it to them.
Okay, so in terms of the planning board, we talked about some goals and objectives, and Clark and I have talked about things we need to study. And with Article 5, it has always been my understanding, we would need a study to back up whatever decisions we make about changes to frontage.
Oh, I don't think you should make the changes this time. I'm talking about just getting it in shape, not
No,
changing.
no,
numbers.
that's fine. No, that's what I understand,
Yeah.
but I still think even shooting for the spring, we should commission a study ASAP. So I wasn't prepared, I didn't prepare anybody for this tonight, but for our next meeting, I want to have some thoughts on what would be the scope of work. Clark and I have talked about this to a certain extent.
Yeah, Tom, based on our last conversation at the planning board and review of our goals, I did reach out to the MAPC and I'm trying to refine a scope of work for that existing neighborhood kind of residential land use pattern analysis that can be used for modeling of proposed zoning changes.
Right.
And
That's what we were thinking about build out analysis
yeah.
and then get
So
some models. If we keep frontage at 50 feet, what does that do? If we change frontage to 150 feet, what does that do?
that's right. There's the ESRI program. And so they're going to put together a proposal. You know, I asked them to give us something that's the minimum, and then what would be a moderate kind of scope, and then wouldn't it be nice scope as a way to sift through getting approval if we need funding approval. But I think that would be a good eye opener and also help us with build out analysis. And even though we've done them before, and interestingly enough, Cassandra knows more about this than I do, but the town's been assigned a company called Utile. It's either Utile or Util,
I think it's Utile.
with a scope of work to help us get a handle on the housing MBTA's housing choice program. So
They're a good firm, Clark. I've worked with them before. I thought it was UTL, but I could be wrong. on that.
Utility,
Whatever,
I very well could stand corrected. It could be Utile.
They're a good firm.
You can call it.
I was
whatever you
going to
want.
announce that next, that we surprisingly got a grant to do some of that. So we'll have some help. And again, we should define the scope of that. I mean, I think writing text of a bylaw, since nobody's done it before, that doesn't necessarily need to be due, but again, build out scenarios on what pieces of land we decide to go into the district, how much of it,
And some modeling.
whether we can do
on-
some of Clark's alternatives to, to high rises and, dense buildings. So that's.
High rise is an interesting idea. What if we had like buildings that were 7 or 8 stories tall and
Well,
Can your
that
fire
district?
department handle it?
The fire department has they have a big ladder.
Mm.
I was thinking if we went in that direction, no more than 5, but we don't want to freak the town out too much, but.
Yeah, I still think pocket neighborhoods compared to a mid-rise
Again,
approach is
and can we do that? Can we get away with doing that under the way the housing choice regulations are at the moment? The friggin' density that
I don't
they
know.
want is.
I don't know if it's
crazy.
getting away with it, but
Well, it's because of
could
the
work,
intensity.
yeah. The
The density
density
requirement is crazy.
the density can work. It's not that bad. It's 2,800 square foot per unit of land area.
All right.
But again, you
It's
have
doable.
to, it's subject to Title V, it's subject to any wetlands protection. All of that is taken out of the density calculation. So it's really
Just buildable area.
just buildable area. It's 15 units per buildable area. So you may have a much larger site and that the gross density may be much less, can be.
Yep. They're not gonna let us play with it, huh?
So
Oh, smart.
since housing choice is something that we can graft on to Articles 4 and 5, since it kind of is, it's got its own things that we can allow and not allow. I don't see us dealing with housing choice this fall. I see us dealing with it in the spring.
You can add it
No.
in later, you
Yeah.
can add it in, but I think we ought to set it up. So that we know in advance, like what you're gonna need a definition of multifamily
Right.
housing that you agree on. we'll have to agree that it will go in the use table and where it will go, you know, you ought to be prepared
Yeah.
for that, so it's not just thrown in, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
let's
no,
stick-
no, I'm anticipating when we do 4 now and we define multifamily, however we're gonna define it, we're going to do it the right definition that we're going to need for current purposes and for housing choice purposes.
Right, because you won't have to be by right now.
And if you saw my drive, I was reversing the way Article 4's table is set up now, where we have uses and then districts are off on this side. The districts would all be at the top, the uses would be this way. So the overlay district for housing choice could just be added as a column at the end when we deal with it. But
The higher
anyway,
density.
to keep us moving along for tonight, for Article 5, for our next meeting, let's have any suggestions about the scope of a study for Article 5, both. So with Article 5, we're dealing with the left side of the table is all the dimensions, the minimum dimensions. The right side of the table is dealing with house size, which is I'm particularly interested in, so I have some ideas for a scope on that. And then also for this grant now that we have for housing choice, think about the scope of what we would like done with that. Again, I don't think a new consultant needs to write a bylaw, because I think we have people here who can write bylaws, and nobody's written one yet. So I don't think their expertise is any better than our expertise, but
You don't need a totally brand new bylaw necessarily.
yeah,
Okay,
right.
so you just have to figure out what the parameters are and then figure out whether you need a new
Right.
one or you can fit it in.
And presumably, some group, either UTL or MAPC, will have a model bylaw to start with. I don't think we have to start with a blank piece of paper, Tom, and.
No, no,
We don't
You
want to invent a new bylaw.
oh, no, I'm not
We wanna
thinking
use
DHCD.
whatever
You
is the
don't,
most
I'm just
standard.
warning you, whenever you adopt somebody else's bylaw, model bylaw, another town's bylaw, if you don't tailor it directly to yours, you mess things up again. All right, so you got to use the same terminology you're using. You got to,
Yeah,
you know.
I think we learned that actually, Judge Cutler, that's a good point. I think with the Situate one, didn't we realize, Tom, that when we looked at that, it was based off the guy who wrote the one in Brookline, and it had copy and paste language. I thought I remember that with
Yeah. That very often happens.
That's happened a lot.
Good point.
The
So-
only other study we've ever talked about is, I think, a quickie, but should we have someone look at our parking regulations and the number of spaces we require per use and see if we're up to date, state of the art on that? I would think that might be so small that perhaps with one of our regular contractors like a Weston and Sampson, we could get permission to just go to them without having to put this out to bid. But the question is, do you think we need it?
Well, MAPC's done a couple of studies of our parking inventory, and I don't have access to what their conclusions or recommendations might be. It could be right there.
Okay,
So we should find that, Cassandra, wherever that exists in some folder.
Yeah, I think there's a binder or a folder in my office that has that information for when it was passed on.
Yeah. So it may be partially figured out. We don't want to start anew necessarily.
right, okay, that's fine. That in terms of this bylaw, those are the only things of study I thought we've needed. New things about climate change, that's part of a multi-committee effort. You know, that's kind of on its own, on its own little track right at the
I
moment.
think if you're going to be looking at the use regulations and fixing up some of the dimensional regulations to get them in shape so they're readable and usable in conjunction with the use regulations, I think put aside the brand new issues until later.
Oh, yeah, no, the
Let's
climate thing won't be
concentrate on
ready
this.
until the spring.
But I do need, we are going to have to address solar energy this time
Yeah.
around. So, you know, that's definitely in the mix.
Yeah, no, and the Alternative Energy Committee is aware of that. It's just you know, with respect to Article 19, if there's other tweaks, 19 and 20, other tweaks to those articles are probably very small
I
housekeeping.
think I rewrote Article 19 and I think
Yeah,
you sent it to
okay.
the committee and they didn't
Yeah.
respond. So that would be good to get a response if they
Yeah.
want that brought up this
Yeah,
time.
well, that's,
Otherwise, we're gonna-
David decided he would take on being the quarterback for that effort. So when he gets back, we'll deal with that. But I would like to, you know, we have 4 definitions and 2 will go with 4. Housekeeping and 5 will go with 4. 19, 20. You know, and within, oh, this might be Jack. No, it's not Jack. Somebody from Chicago. I don't know anybody in Chicago.
Scam.
If it's a client calling me at 7 o'clock, I'm upset. But anyway, so
There's one
All right,
phone call.
so-
He just had a dime. He could
Yeah.
make one phone call.
yeah. All right, so next meeting we'll have we'll have a scope for some studies and get those going. So tonight, and with respect to Article 4, I also would expect whatever we do at Article 4 for the fall to include ADUs,
Yes.
to include the issue whether we're tweaking the inclusionary zoning bylaw. I think bringing the village bylaw in, but again, we haven't talked about any changes to the village. I don't think anybody's talked about changes to the village other than dimensional. And then the harbor, we have to wait to see what we're going to consider. We have to make a vote, and we'll wait till wait till we have a full committee to take a vote once and for all. Are we going to expand mixed use in the harbor or not? If we're not, Article 22 could largely disappear. If we are, then we have to.
We might, but the time isn't now. I think
don't
we
have to
want the
do it
dust
right
to
now.
settle on the overlay district that we created a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well,
And-
all right, well, anyway,
and
we're
then
gonna
look
bring
at
that,
it.
we're gonna bring that to a
Now
head.
isn't a good.
We'll discuss that further when we're all together. So without further ado, we'll get back into Article 4. And Judge Cutler, you have the floor. I don't know if you need to
Okay.
share a screen, probably, but
I printed out.
You did? Okay, good. So what I tried to do with Article 4 is not lose anything that's in the existing Article 4 in terms of prohibitions of uses or limitations on uses. And if you want to make tweaks to that, talk about that later, but I tried to just reword, consolidate, coordinate, and reorganize pretty much what you have. So you start out with your general regulations that you can't use any land or structure for use that's not permitted by the bylaw in the district. So that's basically what it says now. All uses, whether permitted by right or by special permit, are subject to, and here I put in the performance standards that were either scattered about in Article 4 for everything, or were concentrated on business and industrial uses. And I thought, why shouldn't those performance standards just apply across the board? So, I mean, I think it's, I don't see why a residential use wouldn't meet those performance standards any more than a business use. So I'd like your thoughts on that. So that would be just, these performance standards would just be general requirements or limits throughout.
Sounds good to me.
And
People
if you have other
need to
performance
know about
standards,
light standards, so your next door neighbor doesn't put a 1,000-watt.
right. And that was one of the questions I have, this whole thing about dark sky. I'm not sure if we don't need a definition for that or a reference to a code of
It's
some
sort of an
kind.
industry term, but
Yeah.
I don't know if it exists in Webster yet.
Cassandra, do you have any idea about this?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay. So I don't know where the dark sky came from, but it's in the bylaw, and I think Tom had also.
Well, the
Yeah.
lighting industry uses it.
Yeah, I know it's
We
commonly
do as
used. I
architects.
just
Mhm.
I don't know where it.
Okay, I just don't want the
Originated from.
term in there unless there's no questions about what it means to comply with the dark sky requirements. So I guess we ought to check on that.
Clark, is that anything to do with state code?
No, not
Like-
really. There's a darksky.org. I just looked it up. It's, you know,
Okay.
how to make the best use of your lighting source and not waste it up into the atmosphere.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be dark sky compliant, it would be dark sky consistent or something like that, because there's
I
no,
think compliant is the word, yes.
well, compliant means that there's a requirement.
Requirements, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an industry standard, an
So-
industry term,
Needs
not a
to-
regulation.
Right,
But
so
it
it needs
may
to
have
stand-
expanded into regulations.
Right, so we have to get a source for that, so we can cite it. Or use it, or define it in some way, so everybody knows what we're talking about. Otherwise, the building inspector is gonna be up the creek without a paddle if somebody complains. Because he's not gonna know how to enforce it, so. And then there was a requirement that discharge of waste into a private or public system is subject to the written approval of the Cohasset Board of Health and the sewer commissioners. Doesn't that go without saying? Do we need that?
Sorry,
Noise and odor? You're talking about a number?
No, so under my draft, it would be 1E.
Oh, when I discharge, yeah.
Isn't that just? I don't think that needs to be in the zoning. I think that's, of course, any water discharge is subject to their regulations. Seems sort of.
where is it? Where are you reading this? I'm
So
sorry.
this is 304.3B 1E. This is one of the performance standards that's in the bylaw now.
Am I missing?
This is the June 21st edition that I sent you.
Four 4.5.
Your numbering starts with Article 4 use regulations, and it starts with 4.3 general. Were you gonna renumber that to start?
Yeah,
with
it has to be
1.1?
one. That's just
Oh,
one step.
okay. Now I see it. That's
we
why.
start- So we just start with a new
Well,
numbering system.
4.1 will be the reference to the table like it is now.
No, 4.1 is general. 4. The
Oh.
table is referenced later.
Oh, okay.
So this is the first part of these regulations. We're just putting in the general requirements that are just applicable across the board. And
Yeah, which
so,
we have a long laundry list of things in the current bylaw, right?
and I basically consolidated them, moved them all here. And my question has to do with this requirement
Discharge.
that the discharge of
of
waste has to be subject to approval of the Cohasset Board of Health or the Sewer Committee. And that goes without saying, you can't discharge waste into a private or public system without that approval. So I
Right.
think that can
Right.
go. I don't think that's needed.
Well, does it?
It doesn't hurt it doesn't hurt stating the obvious every now and then.
Mhm.
I mean, this was written, you know, in the 60s when, discharge of oils and toxic
Right,
waste went right into the
right,
storm drain. In fact, I've been on a number of projects where storm drain and sewer get mixed up
right,
by the site contractor.
right.
They
so
had that
maybe-
problem at MIT where
Right.
there was a sewer pipe that was running right into the Charles River.
Right, but maybe this doesn't mean subject to written approval. Maybe it's more must comply with the applicable regulations of the
Right.
of the Board of Health or sewer commission.
I don't have a problem leaving it in just as a zone because the other rules of the other two boards aren't zoning bylaws.
Okay,
I don't have a problem making this part of it.
okay, but rather than written approval, should it be shall comply with the applicable regulations of the Board of Health? Yeah. All right.
And I think all the other stuff Clark was talking about, oils and gases, we had something about toxic materials and noxious
Yes,
uses
and that's prohibited altogether, right?
somewhere else, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
F, it references the US Bureau of Mines. Actually, there's a couple of references in here. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration standards. We need to tie this down a little bit. Date, published by, I don't think, just kind of hangs out there. And I say this because one of the cases that I had before me in the land court rested on the right edition of the US Department of Commerce list of uses, and it was like you had to have the right one. The use was on one list and it wasn't on the other. So I don't know when this was all put in there, whether these things even exist.
Yeah, I mean, my question is, table 7 of what?
Yeah.
US Bureau of Mines is an agency, it's not a
Yeah,
document.
exactly. So I think if we're going to have something like this, we have to tie down what those standards are.
Yeah, and maybe it's, something we can do broader about
Right.
complying with noise, vibration, work site safety regulations of the US government as amended from time to
Something
time.
like that. Yeah,
Something
I think,
broad.
so I will look into that a little more to see if there's something. And if any of you have anything or are aware of
Well,
anything, please let me know.
John Howland, the building inspector, may know what the references are.
That's a good point. And as a matter of fact, I did want to ask Cassandra, could you make sure that John gets copies of this stuff so that he can raise any issues that he has in interpreting it or enforcing any of these things before we get to the public hearing stage, so we can fix any problems that he might have?
Yeah, absolutely. I can send him any drafts.
Great. Okay.
In terms of vibration, it seems like there's projects that are under construction that might have vibratory systems in their construction, and then there's long-term vibratory issues. What we run into with buildings quite a bit is rooftop HVAC systems. Sometimes we have to hire a acoustical consultant to make sure that all reasonable methods for vibration isolation are done, because an office building might not care if a neighbor, if there's a residential neighborhood nearby,
Right.
it might be really annoying to have that equipment running.
Right.
And we also ran into this with the the sound issue with the wind turbine hearings that we had,
Mhm.
where whatever sound was generated couldn't be any more than 10 decibels over ambient sound
Right.
level. So there are some standards that we've used, but I don't recall if they were in the bylaw or whether we referenced the state requirements.
I think Article 19 has those standards. It's pretty
So maybe
detailed.
we can import some of that if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, it's useful for buildings as well as with turbines.
All right, let me see what I can find, and I can offer some suggestions, and we can move that. Okay. So you had asked at the last session that we put in uses and activities that are expressly prohibited. Never mind that they're not listed. They're absolutely, no question, prohibited. So I put those in again. I took the open display and open storage of junk. Basically, that's already prohibited in the bylaw.
Yeah.
Right.
So are we, these things I think are also listed in the table with an N next to them?
Well, I'm
Are
not
we
going
gonna
to put them in
continue?
the table. If they're absolutely prohibited, they're not even in the table. This
Okay.
is
Well, then
fair.
item number 6 that we also prohibit in the table, I think we only prohibit it in the table at the moment, is fast food establishments.
Okay, that's I get to later. Okay.
And
So
okay, yeah, because I had a question of how we distinguish Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts from
right,
McDonald's.
exactly, and I'm going to get to that. Okay. So the other thing you don't expressly exclude, but you may want to, are adult uses. And that's up to, that's a policy question. And
That,
We've never
That I-
had that in the bylaw before. I know some towns have it, and planners have described to me that you want to have it so that if it's missing, some businesses have said if it's not shown in them, then it can go anywhere. Not
yeah, I
that,
mean, if you don't describe it and say that those uses are prohibited, somebody
Yeah.
could come in and say, hey, I'm operating a bookstore. You can't control the content, or I've got a movie theater. You can't tell me what I can show. But if you rely upon the state law, which says that you can require special permits and put them in certain locations in the town or whatever, and if you don't do that, it's not a permitted use.
Well,
I would recommend that you do exclude them unless
Okay.
people really want them.
I haven't heard any groundswell for this type of use. I think it makes sense to exclude them.
Yeah, I think my draft had excluded it in the table. I think it should be out. The
Yeah.
places that permit it, the towns that permit it usually have some tucked away industrial park or office park where they can tuck them away, and we don't have that. So,
No. The other thing was you do prohibit non-medical marijuana establishments. And so I put in pretty much the language that's already there. I may
Yep.
be able to reduce it a little bit if I can refer to the statute. If it's repeating, I didn't check that. So that may just be defined a little bit.
Yeah.
Commercial earth removal and mining operations. Somebody mentioned that at the last meeting that we had.
Yeah, because in the way we reformed Article 11, the old earth removal statute, we wanted to, bylaw, we wanted to make sure it's still prohibited if there was any lack of, it says that in the Article 11 that was amended, but just to be very
Just as-
clear about it.
No.
Yeah, yeah.
Open up a gravel pit.
Yeah.
And mobile home parks and trailer camps, which
Yeah.
the bylaw prohibits now. So those are all in there, and that takes care of sort of general things that apply across the board, every district.
Yeah.
I then went on to number 2 is principal use regulations. And this is where we refer to the table of principal uses, which would be a subsection of principal uses. And I have several descriptions of how the table works. And I think they're pretty standard. If it says no, it's not allowed in the district. If it says special permit, it's allowed by special permit of the Board of Appeals. If it says special permit 1, it's allowed by the planning board special permit. And if it says yes, it's allowed as a right. Now, I did mention in here that if it says, even if it says yes or special permit, it's still subject to any specific use regulations, restrictions, or limitations that are in Article 4, and those will follow.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that I added in. Oh, here it is. It's number 7. And I don't know, this is a question. A lot may be used and developed for more than one principal or light industry use allowed by right in the district, if the applicable parking and dimensional requirements can be met. So that would mean you could have one large development that might be a mixture of a lab and a storage, an outdoor storage use, and another large business like a Big Lot or something like that, all on the same site. They don't have to each be on a lot. They're sort of individual principal uses. It's a question. Some towns do, some towns don't.
It seems practical. You could have office space and retail mixed together, aside from the commercial / residential mix of uses. But no, I mean, for the commercial districts, having multiple uses is sort of a part of the a part of the thing.
Yeah, so
Part of
this
the
wouldn't be
rural
a
makeup.
this wouldn't be a mixed use development in that it was sort of a coordinated thing operated by one entity with a
Hmm.
lot of different uses in it. It might be somebody who owns like an office park situation and builds individual buildings and leases them to separate companies, but
Yeah.
not necessarily under one umbrella.
Right.
It's like the
Okay.
Situate, it's like the new Situate Hill development that's supposed to go in, which, you know, has office space, it has warehouse space and all in one site, and they're gonna
Yeah.
be individually rented out.
Yeah.
I would
yeah.
just, you know, my little thing is business or light industry, I just put the word commercial.
Well, yeah, we have-
Well, if we consolidate districts in both the harbor and 3A as I propose, there won't be a light industry district anymore.
Right,
We don't,
right.
we don't
Well, no,
have
no,
any
I-
development in the light industry district, so
Not
my
light
thought is,
industry district
like-
use, a light industry use,
yeah,
which
all
is,
right.
which is
Well,
one of the
again,
categories. That's
we
all.
just gotta make sure as we change everything, we make sure everything is, the
Exactly.
terminology is the same.
That's what I'm trying to do, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so then we get into the principle, before we get into the actual table, and you can discuss whether you want the table first and then the description of those categories, or the description first and then the table, sort of 6 to 1, half a dozen the other.
No,
Um,
I think we should keep going, but my first comment about this section C is, so
Hmm.
these things, these terms are being defined here rather than Article 2.
Well, you know,
And that's fine, but again,
decision for you all to make. It's just, if you're looking at the table of use and you say, okay, I've got X use, is it allowed?
Yeah.
This saves you the step of going into a very dense and complex set of definitions when they're only related, you know, to whether the
Okay.
use is in a category. We may not, maybe we'll define some in Article 2 and some are, I mean, really, ideally, it should be more of a list or a description of a group of types of uses, what I was trying to get at. And I wasn't successful because it was, you know, it was hard to kind of come to grips with, well, what's in this category that we're talking about?
Yeah,
Because it
all right.
could be broad or it could be very narrow. It just depends.
I don't have a problem putting them here. I think it makes a lot of logical sense. You know, again, a long time ago, our original objective was to put all the definitions in Article 2 rather than having them all over the bylaw.
Yeah,
But, you know, if they're in 4 and 2 and 4, that's better than where they are, you know, they're all over the place today.
Yeah.
So that's-
yeah.
That's fine. I'm fine. And, yeah, these groupings look, you know,
Do they work? I mean,
it's similar to the things, you know, in my draft that I was
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
do, and it's just, you know, like, for example, when you get to the residential ones, you know,
mhm.
we have all these, you know, boarding house, lodging house, rooming house, you know,
Yeah.
how many of these do we split hairs about?
Right. So if we just put them in one category, it's
Yeah,
there. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, and,
We would
you know,
define it. And those are. I didn't
category is a
define it here 'cause
term, but,
it's hard to
you know,
find terms in your Article 2. So I
Right.
didn't add a definition here.
okay.
Um,
So,
I,
just looking at the
the-
first page, so for childcare facilities and also for religious use, isn't there a section 3 protection?
yeah, that's why they're
Law 40A?
extensive. They're listed here. So those in the use table will go yes, 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 yes.
Okay.
Across the board.
By virtue of section 3.
Right, right. And so you'll see that I divided up, for example, the agricultural uses also have an exemption, but some are not. So I divided up those that are the exempt ones, which is the commercial agricultural use, and that's got a definition in Article 3. That's exempt. And I added in, you can say if it's conducted on parcels of 5 acres or more. So that's up to you as to whether or not you want to add that, you know, that sort of limitation on it.
So it can't be an agricultural use if it's 4.9 acres.
Well, it would be a farm use, which would be similar, but it doesn't have the same
Oh, okay.
exemption
Yeah.
that you have under 40A. So that's a question as to whether or not you want that acreage limitation or not. There's a
But
different,
we have one farm use that I think it's over 5 acres. We got Hollyfield Farm.
Yeah, it's well over 5 acres.
yeah. I mean, that's usually what it is, and they can have farm, I mean, when I say farm stands, they basically could have a store, you know, that sells some of their agricultural products and anything related. I mean, there's almost no limitation on what can be done on these things, which is why
Yeah.
sort of 5 acres is kind of a good,
And they have a farm stand, they keep animals, they
Right.
host dinners, they host.
well, they don't, that's not agricultural. You're not supposed to do events.
Well, they do events in their greenhouse.
Yeah, so you'd have to say that that was an accessory use that you.
That's, yeah,
allowed.
that falls under John's purview. He can worry about that.
You know, there's also, as you see, there'll be exempt educational use here, which later on we'll get into the non-exempt educational uses as a business use. But if it's on land owned or leased by the Commonwealth, this town or religious organization or a nonprofit educational group, that's exempt. So this group of extensive uses will probably be things that are just about allowed by right in every district, or but they may be, you know, so, you know, you just, that's easy, that's done. You then get into the residential uses, and I had a question about assisted living facility. Don't have anything like it. Is this something that you want to add? I know you took out, there was like a senior development or something that you used to have.
Yeah.
We had
I
a
think
senior overlay district when
Yeah.
we thought,
Yeah, that's gone. I think we should have it because we do have the Sunrise facility on 3A.
And that's an assisted living, yeah. And then you can decide where that goes, you know, where
Yeah,
it's,
yeah, it would ideally only be on a commercial district, so.
yeah.
Can someone,
And you know, that may be something you want by special permit, you know, and that's, you can decide. You use the term single family, one family, whatever. I am calling this a single family detached dwelling. Just, it's one detached building used for dwelling purposes, you know, so that's all, just one dwelling in it. And so there's no question about whether a townhouse, one half of a townhouse or one half of a duplex is a single family dwelling because it's owned separately. It's a condo or something. So this is just makes that clear. You allowed the 2-family conversions. I left it just the way it was. The multifamily conversion, I allowed just the way it was. You have a definition of multifamily dwelling in Article 2 for purposes of the what do you call it? The MBTA related multifamily. I think a definition containing 3 or more dwelling units is okay, but you talked about maybe 2 or 3. You don't want more than 4. I mean, there was a discussion of that at the last work session, and I thought that people sort of came to the conclusion we don't want any more than 4 units in a building. But I mean,
well, no, I mean, I think there's all kinds of different ways to make up a residential project, whether it's a multifamily residential project. You know, they could have 4, 8, 10, 12. I mean, and they're all a part of the same building. And I was wondering if instead of multifamily dwelling, do we want to change that to multifamily building? Because I'm not sure multifamily dwelling, it's multifamily dwellings.
we could have the multifamily dwelling is this building with more than 3, you know, more than 2 units really. Or it could also be a multifamily use, dwelling use, which is either a multifamily dwelling building or a use where you have a number of buildings on one property.
Well,
with-
you've got multifamily conversion and then you've got multifamily dwelling, and I'm not sure the word dwelling is the right one. And I think it may be either a multifamily building or project.
Well, the problem is you need a multifamily dwelling definition that is consistent with state law when you do your MBTA community compliance.
Oh, okay.
And how
So
they, I'm
that's
sorry,
straight out of,
multifamily housing, not development.
We need
Okay.
the definition. The question, Clark, I think, is, are we going to allow a multifamily development that's not a conversion in residence A, B, and C?
well, this doesn't say whether it's residence A, B, or C.
No, I know, but that's when this
You would
definition
have to apply anywhere
well,
You're
in
gonna
a zoning
decide-
district.
when the definition goes into the chart, it'll say Y for the overlay, the housing choice overlay district, but it could say N as
For everything
prohibited
else.
in A, B, and C.
Yeah.
And mixed use, the housing that's involved in mixed use is something different because we're defining mixed use separately.
Right.
So mixed use, multi units can happen in the village and they'll happen, wherever else we allow mixed use.
Mixed use development, that's the next one. But what
Yeah.
about multifamily development? As long as their next definition,
Okay, it's multifamily housing is what the term used in chapter 48, section 3 is.
perfect.
That's a building with 3 or more residential dwelling units.
Okay.
Or 2 or more buildings on the same lot with more than 1 dwelling unit in each building. So you
Perfect.
could have a bunch
So-
of duplexes, you could have a bunch of
Yeah.
triplexes or a mixture in one development.
I
That would
understand the concept. So we cross out dwelling and we put in
be housing.
housing. I think that makes good sense.
Right.
Okay, and we'll just use the definition that's
Yeah.
in
Perfect. Yeah,
pretty much in the statute.
industry standard.
Yes, use this state statute as, again, this is another one of the things we were trying to get away from was our unique Cohasset terminology.
Okay.
Stick to the state terminology where we can.
Do you want to exclude from that any mixed use building with apartments in it?
Well, we've got mixed use defined next.
Next, right? So
Under
that's a
G.
separate use is what I'm
Yes.
saying. Okay, all right.
I mean, it
Yeah,
either
no,
is or it
I
isn't.
like,
Like
I like those
like a little
distinctions.
pregnant, right? It's either mixed use or it's all residential.
Right. And then the question with mixed use development, do you want to limit it to a mixture of houses and business or a mixture of houses or housing and any other non-residential uses? So you could potentially have, I guess,
Office space or
office space, some kind of hospital laboratory.
In which definition are you looking at?
So this is in mixed use development.
Oh, yeah, I think the definition as it's written is broad enough. And again, then when we
Well,
get.
It doesn't include an institutional, like it wouldn't include school and education building, wouldn't include hospital.
Well, for example, in the village that we're allowing mixed use, and let's say maybe even on 3A, the commercial uses that could be developed are those that would be allowed under the district. So I don't know that we have to distinguish them in a definition of mixed
So
use.
you would say a mix of residential and non-residential uses
that would
Allow-
open up
allow-
any-
in the underlying
As
district.
allowed in the underlying
Okay.
district.
Okay, so you would only allow mixed use development in non-residential districts.
Well, so far, that's all we do. I don't think
Right.
we're going to go into. Again, and this is where I want to get some feedback from the community too, but I don't think we're taking any direction toward changing the residential districts or,
Right,
making them other than what they are.
adding business uses to the residential districts, you don't want to do that, so.
No,
I don't think so. I mean, not without exhaustive study, but I think the answer is still gonna be, my sense, no. We
Okay,
want residential
Judge
district.
Cutler, can I
full
ask
residential
just a
district.
quick question? What is the definition? What's the definition of multi? I'm just thinking of like where there's zoning that allows for 2, 3, 4 families, but not.
The multifamily housing?
Yeah.
The definition in the statute is a building with 3 or more residential dwelling units,
3 or more. Okay.
or 2 or more buildings on the same lot, each with more than 1 residential dwelling unit in each building. So you could have a series of 2 duplexes, for example, on the same lot under one development. That would be
like the James Lane project on the other side of the tracks. Those are
Yes, but the
houses,
James
separate
Lane
buildings.
project, the James Lane project is in the village district. In RA, RB, and RC, the definition is fine. It's
Yeah.
just when we get to the
Where you're gonna
table,
allow
are we
it.
going to allow it to be developed in RA, B, and C?
Right.
I don't think we do today,
Mhm.
other than in the conversion
Right,
thing.
right,
If we do, it's a special permit. And as you know, the one property where this has come up to think about is the Oaks. And, you know, are we going to allow that or not? Or are we going to keep our residential districts to simply be single or possibly 2-family
right,
buildings at all?
right.
So
Well,
these
Let
these
me do
bigger
a for
questions,
instance. Let me
these
do a for
bigger
instance.
questions are for the table, not for the definition.
Exactly. But for the reason that that I would suggest maybe that we put the mixed use development under business uses or
Yes.
commercial, I don't know, that
Yes.
may have to go someplace else, right?
Yes.
But it's still a
I-
residential use. It's still,
It is still got a residential use, you're right, and that's
maybe
why,
it wants to go in as a residential use, if there's any residential use,
yes, there's
whether
gotta
it's
be,
mixed use or not. I think if
Gotta
it's
be.
there,
yeah,
Yeah, but under our current zoning, it's only allowed in an underlying commercial district. And I've never heard a sentiment to change that.
okay, all right,
But for you, Judge, we do have a brand new, I think it's being built. We do have a mixed use in a residential district across from the Catholic Church, but that was a grandfathered use.
okay,
It was a garage, an auto repair place with an apartment above it. So now he's redeveloping it with stores on the ground floor and 4 apartments upstairs,
right,
which we approved because
right,
it was grandfathered. But that's the only example in town we have of mixed use in a residential district. And I
yeah,
honestly don't think anybody wants that.
that's what I would think, okay.
I
So then,
agree.
I would
We don't-
take the mixed use definition here and move it to business uses.
we would not be able to sell this concept on the floor of town meeting, so let's
Right.
forget it.
all right, rooming house and boarding house, you have 2 separate uses now, so we'll just lump them together as one category. If you can think of another term that you want to throw in there, we can throw that in.
And you've got B&Bs elsewhere, right?
They're elsewhere, yes.
As well
So-
as motel, hotel.
Those are
Holiday Inn.
elsewhere. Those are elsewhere, yeah.
Okay.
So under business uses, I highlighted automobile repair, auto body repair. I lumped them together. Do you want them separate? Or
No,
Is it-
that's fine.
is that okay?
Yeah. The one thing that was missing from this related to that is marine repair. I saw you had marine storage and we have marinas, but
Oh, okay.
to the extent we need it, to the extent we.
Throw that in there,
one of the-
okay,
Yeah,
Well,
one of the
we-
complaints on the harbor is that we don't have any place to get your boat fixed anymore.
right. okay.
And so to the extent we want to encourage people to have a marine repair business, we should define that. Similar to the car.
Yes, so we can add in marine repair to the category of marina, boatyard, or marine repair.
Okay,
Okay,
Did we skip?
wait, we skipped for a minute because.
Okay.
yeah, no,
let's-
I'm sorry.
Well,
It's
I
just
just
because-
wanted to make a comment. I think it makes sense to combine the automotive repair and auto body repair. In the past, auto body repair shops were the source of quite a bit of noxious fumes and
Okay,
gases, but it's
indoor.
such a highly regulated
Right.
industry now that you can't just like go out there and blast off
Right.
material into the atmosphere.
These uses have to be totally enclosed. They cannot do their repair outside. There's an
Well,
outside.
that wasn't the point. I'm just saying it the industry is very regulated with, exhaust systems and filtration.
Oh, yeah,
As opposed to the past where it probably wasn't. And there's nothing worse than living in a house next door to a business that's spewing noxious fumes into the across the property.
Yeah, and right now we have two of them, right? We have two places that do repair work
Uh,
on North Main and Forest, and then on 3A and Pond. The garage, the
do they still
garage in
do
the
anything
center.
on the corner of South Main and Spring Street?
Is that still even open?
Well, it's a garage.
Yeah,
Well, that could be an automobile service station, or it
Yeah.
could be a light. I have another under light industry use, which is a
Yeah.
repair garage.
Well, do you add automotive service too?
Well, automotive service is
Service
part,
repair,
automobile
body-
service station is different from an auto repair or collision place. So an automobile service station I have here is an open air business use, because a lot of it's outside. It's for the sale of motor vehicle fuel and related products and services, including a car wash facility. But not including storage or sale of unregistered motor vehicles. If we put repair there, is that, I guess that was a question, is that different from an automobile auto body repair shop? That's one kind of animal. I suppose there is some minor repairs, automobile repairs that are in the automobile service station. We could include that. Minor.
I think the only reason to split hairs is we were going to allow one type of use and prohibit the other.
Right.
So
Well,
I don't know that you can broaden this to say automobile service station repair, auto body repair, and include all of it in one umbrella if we're going to regulate all of them the same.
Right.
If we're going to, exclude auto body shops, then fine, then we have to separate that one out.
Well, you've got a difference between operations that are doing most of their business outside. You're probably only going to want those in the industrial district or some of the business districts. Whereas it's entirely inside business. So they're painting cars, they're all enclosed, they're not leaving stuff outside, they're not running motors outside, things like that. It's just an enclosed business. It might be more amenable to any business district, or maybe the 3A business district or something, because you're not creating a problem for any neighbors. So as we go into the chart and you decide where these things are allowed, it may be that some of them get lumped together because they're all allowed in the same district and all prohibited in the same district. So we want to add minor repair for now to the automobile service station. Okay. So the next business use was building trade. So this is, again, somebody who's a contractor, where they're doing on-site work for customers and storing things, but it's got to be enclosed within a building, as opposed to a more industrial use where they got a lot going on outside. Craft shop or artist studio, same kind of thing. Now we could lump those together and basically say, if you're just a small scale business and you're in the building trades or you're a craft or an artist or whatever, you can do that, and just everything's got to be inside. The difference, I think, is the craft shop and artist studio, they probably have more retail some retail associated where people are coming to actually go on site and buy things. All right, fast food service, this is the one. So right now you prohibit fast food restaurants. I was trying to think and I said, there are snack bars, there are Starbucks, there are pizza shops, there are various things that don't really fall within the fast food restaurant category. But basically you are serving something to someone who comes up to the counter and you're handing them something, whether it's packaged or an ice cream cone or some single portion for someone to eat. And they're going to eat it more than likely off the premises.
Has this been challenged though, where somebody does make the distinction between a Dunkin' Donuts and a
You
McDonald's?
don't say Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's. It's not, it doesn't matter what it is. A McDonald's would be a fast food restaurant because they're serving meals, they're not just serving a slice of pizza or an ice cream cone or a hamburger from a stand. They're much more of a meal preparation thing. So you go and, so, I don't know. You can also, I was trying to set up a situation where not all fast food restaurants, not all fast food is in a restaurant. I was just, and maybe you don't have any of those stands. I've only been to one on 3A.
The ice cream place, JJ.
Yeah. But I don't know whether you have them down by the harbor or something like that, where there's kind of a snack stand where I don't know.
No, but in the permit for the hotel project, we envisioned, a seasonal kiosk that might sell ice cream or something.
So maybe that should be reserved and it might be something that's considered an accessory to other uses.
Yeah.
Okay, not a standalone. Okay, so we won't have that. We will take fast food service off as a principal use. And fast food restaurants will be one of the prohibited uses.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I don't know, I guess, Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts is a meal, it's breakfast.
There's always an argument as to whether or not a Dunkin' Donuts is a bakery or it's a fast food place.
Right. It's all the above, really.
Yeah. And both of them create traffic jams, especially Starbucks.
But the distinction here is whether it's sit down or not, both whether the food is fast, medium, or slow.
Is it served to sit on the premises or is it to take away? What's the primary operation?
Right. And it might be 51%, 49%, but what is the most type of activity that goes on there? And it makes sense to make a distinction between this fast food service and a fast food restaurant or a restaurant. I think I don't know if I would take it out, but I also don't think we would necessarily exclude fast food service in any of the business districts.
Well, there are sub shops or sandwich shops or whatever. There are pizza stores. I mean, a lot of those could fall within the category of fast food.
Right.
I suppose you could make the distinction and then say they're allowed by special permit and put some sort of parameters on them rather than prohibit them absolutely. Or we have to come up with a sort of medium category.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wouldn't want to make a situation where we couldn't have another JJ's or a JJ's in a different location.
Yeah, but we also did. Frankly, I don't think McDonald's would ever open in our town just because of its location. But people would scream if we all of a sudden had a McDonald's.
Right.
or Burger King. Yeah.
And there are towns, I
agree.
think Wellfleet, I think might be one of them. Or is it Orleans? One of them has adopted a bylaw that basically they don't want formula restaurants in town. And so they have this whole elaborate thing about, it's got to be, if it's a business that's part of a multinational corporation, or, there's all kinds of parameters to say, we
Yeah.
want local businesses, we want one-offs, we don't want a chain. It's
Yeah,
very,
I was just thinking if we could exclude franchises, but then Dunkin' and Starbucks are franchises.
yeah.
But don't they exclude franchises on the Vineyard?
They probably do.
There's one
And-
like Dairy Queen that got in the 50s before zoning.
Yeah.
And-
It's
and-
But I
Maybe
still think the distinction is whether you have a drive-through,
Well, that's a different thing.
probably-
You could make a drive-through prohibited. You could make, so you can't have
Drive-through.
drive-through restaurants.
a drive-through
drive-up
restaurant or a drive-in restaurant,
Or
like-
drive-in.
like
You mean an old-fashioned one where you park and somebody comes out to your car and takes your order?
on roller skates, right?
I don't
Yeah.
think they do that anymore. I think people more likely don't go to fast food restaurants anymore. I think they order DoorDash or something. Everything is delivered these days.
Right, yeah, your double cheeseburger gets delivered. It costs like $3 and
Right.
gets delivered.
I don't know if it's worth looking at Hingham, because
Yeah.
they prohibited this, and they're near the highway where we're not.
Right.
And they have, I'm sure somebody's thought about a
Take a look.
McDonald's by the highway, and
Yeah.
and they've seemed to have kept it at bay. So I don't know if they have magic language, but it might be worth taking a look at.
Okay.
Well, the distinctions I think are important. Like if Panera wanted to open up a shop in Cohasset, everybody would be like, great, I think.
But that's a regular.
But then
restaurant.
McDonald's or
There's-
Burger King,
Yeah,
No
there's
way.
some meals that are taken out, but some that are mostly that are eaten there. That's the difference, I think. All right, I will look at that a little further.
Yeah, we just don't want to open the door to something we kept out for a while.
Right, okay. Financial or business office. That's straightforward. It's any kind of business office you can think of. And it's not a definition, it's more a listing. And one of the things that we talked about with Woody was he didn't want to exclude anything that might come along that he thinks would be good. And I said, well, let the building inspector, if we have a broad enough category, let the building inspector decide whether something falls within that category using the comparison listing of other similar type uses. And if he says no, they can go to the ZBA and the ZBA can decide.
Yeah, because
So-
we're keeping the use variance. So.
Yeah. So, as I
You
mentioned,
you forgot our profession.
well, that's
Where-
different. Professional office, that comes later.
Oh, that's later. Oh, we get a special category.
Different office, right, because, yeah, it's a different sort of
Okay, that's sorry about.
operation, right? And you may want to lump all the office uses together. Maybe it doesn't matter to you in the long run, so that's
It
something.
really doesn't, I don't think. but-
well, the banking has a kind of
Retail sort of, that,
the walk-in,
yeah,
Oh, well,
more foot traffic and more sort of dynamic parking than
Right.
an office
right. Same with a real estate
for
agent.
professionals and
by
engineers.
by the way, banks can have drive-throughs. So we want to prohibit it for one use, we might have to prohibit
Decide
it.
that, you have to decide that, yeah. Okay, for-profit education would be either a private school that's for profit or a business that offers training classes or training programs, dance instructors, music lessons, that kind of thing, driving instructors. So anything like that, but I said, but not including animal training. I don't know if I need to put that in there.
I don't know.
That's fine.
Makes
Okay.
sense.
Okay, the funeral home is what you allow now. I said, but in not including cremation facilities.
Yep.
Okay, that exclusion is not in the bylaw right now, and I just want to make that sort of
Yep.
apparent. Indoor entertainment, amusement, or sports facility, anything where you're inside, you're entertaining or doing some kind of a fitness thing. It's commercial. It's open to the general public, and it doesn't include adult entertainment establishments. So it could be a theater, could be a concert hall, could be a I don't know, a trampoline park, all inside, that sort of thing. Medical laboratory or clinic. This is something you don't have specifically listed, but I thought it might be useful to have.
Are we allowed to? Are
And
we
that's
allowed
where
to-
I said, but not including drug rehab or criminal rehabilitation.
Are we allowed to exclude that?
I think you can as a use, yeah. Now, if the state, if Massachusetts came along and had a criminal rehab facility on their property, you couldn't prohibit it. But a private corporation couldn't come in and set it up.
Your
Okay.
Honor, related to that, I know that post offices are exempt from local zoning because they're United States of America
If
property.
it's a US property facility, yeah.
And you've just said state also,
Yeah,
but our local municipal.
yeah, you're an
property is-
extensive use, so you're not automatically immune, but if the bylaw says that if it's a town, operation on town land, it's not prohibited, it's allowed.
Okay, I mean, I wasn't really thinking of the use, I was thinking like all like zoning parameters for federal land and state land, setbacks and heights and things like that.
That you get to when you get to the setback requirements.
And I wondered, could there be an exemption for municipal
Yes,
owned property as well?
yes, you can
What about
decide,
county? What about county owned property?
that would be exempted.
It's a county's exempted from local zoning,
Hmm.
right?
All right, so,
Thank you.
so this medical laboratory and clinic I had added in, and I specifically wanted to get at the rehabilitation center issue that we discussed at the last meeting. And there was some concern about what kind of, so you want something where someone can go get physiotherapy, or speech therapy or something like that. And that's a rehab, if they've had an operation and they need to sort of recover their strength and their mobility. But you can exclude substance abuse or criminal rehab, as a
Sure.
category.
I don't think that's going to be controversial.
Right, okay.
That would
So-
include a sober house?
A
which
sober
Seems to be
house,
the term of the moment. but-
no, a sober house would not be a rehab center. And I
Okay.
don't know, I honestly I've never seen a bylaw that specifically allows it. And it may be something that somehow the state can get in as under one of the exemptions. They
Yeah.
probably put it in as an educational use.
Yeah.
Because they're learning how to cope with everyday life and all of that. They usually wind up that way. Medical marijuana treatment centers you allow, so we would reference the provision that's going to go in later with all the parameters about it. An office building would be occupied by multiple financial, business, or professional offices. It's not just one office as the use, it's a group of offices. Personal service establishments, this is like a big wide open category. You'll see I've listed just about everything I could think of here as examples. But basically, it's small scale, it's on-site consumer services, but not adult uses. So I couldn't, pet groomers, I mean, like, No, I just, I
You know, sometimes I worry when you say not adult services, it gives somebody an idea.
Well,
Well,
it's,
you
I
know,
just want to leave it
for a
out.
massage, I didn't want to put
Anyone any
massage,
ideas?
but there could be, or, you know, I suppose a tattoo parlor. I didn't list those as
no,
examples.
it'll happen if somebody wants to do a massage parlor.
Someone wants to do it, they'll do it, right? Print shop or photo studio, and I just put sort of limit on the size, but you don't have to, could be bigger. This is a state, this could be, I don't know, Minuteman Press or, Ginkgo's copy shop or whatever, or just simply a photography studio. Just because it involves print and paper and all ink and all that sort of stuff. And it may be that you put that in with another category. You may not have to have it that way.
Is 10,000 square feet the right number? Could we?
I don't know. I was just sort of saying.
Let's maybe cohasitize this, 2,000 square feet, maybe. I mean, I don't see anybody having
Then-
a print shop or a photo studio that would be any bigger than 2,000 square feet.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, I made a note here, so
Okay, so we'll check on that. Okay.
10,000 square feet seems unusually large.
Yeah.
for
Let me go-
our little town. We do tend to be small scale
Yeah,
on these kinds of things.
all right.
Can I go back to something a minute?
Yeah,
You mentioned dry cleaning, drop off, pickup.
yeah.
So an actual dry cleaning establishment where they're doing the cleaning on the premises, which has a lot of
You
toxic
don't allow
stuff.
it. You don't allow those.
Okay, that's fine, as
You
long
don't
as that's,
allow laundry- You don't allow a laundry either.
yeah, okay, as long as that is
See, like a
excluded.
laundromat, we don't have
You
laundromats.
don't allow laundromats because it's water usage and it's all kinds of stuff. that, you know, a
No,
lot of
the dry cleaners are bad because of the toxic.
stuff there. Right, right.
Chatham, I still think has a big plume from a dry cleaner that's underneath its village.
No, this would be a pickup facility where, you know, supposedly
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
a
that's
cleaner
fine,
in
that's
another
fine.
town and they'll take, you know, take. your
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just want to make sure. Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, professional offices, there we go. Flip. You would be in that, you would be in there, Tom. And that includes medical and dental offices and their incidental laboratories and clinics.
Mhm.
Repair shop would be small scale repairs. You do allow that right now. I threw in everything I could think of. But it's got to be enclosed within a building. The restaurant, and here you define a restaurant, so that would be one category, but I've tried to lump in lunchroom, coffee shop, or similar establishments where meals and beverages are prepared to order and are served primarily for consumption on premises. So if you have a local, you know, dive that people stop by for coffee every morning and they sometimes take it out, but a lot more people sit there and have breakfast, that would be allowed. But if it's a really to-go kind of place, then that wouldn't fall in the category of a coffee shop, I don't think. So that's something you may want to think about, those categories and whether or not they all need to go in there. Retail store is a very broad category. I threw in there, it's not only sale and display, but presumably if, just to mention that you can't manufacture anything on the premises unless you're actually selling it. So I suppose.
Okay. Yeah, because one of our leading citizens has a T-shirt shop where he makes the T-shirts in his shop on
And
3A.
sells. Yeah, so that would be okay. He
Okay.
can't sell other stuff, right?
Okay.
Right.
Good.
And that,
He'd be angry if we put him out of business.
oh yeah, and then that use doesn't include adult bookstores or marijuana establishments. That's out. All right, here we go with the hotels and stuff. I called it transient lodging accommodations. Letting of rooms for transient occupancies in a licensed hotel, motel, or inn. This is not short-term rentals. This is not vacation rentals. This is not bed and breakfast, not any of those things.
Yeah, and this is where I think I would have included boarding houses and lodging houses all within this category.
Well, boarding houses is really somebody's home in a resident, and these are allowed in
Well,
residential.
don't they have to be licensed?
Yeah, but they're not a hotel. Usually they
All right,
rent out rooms to a boarder who's there for a long time.
yeah,
Sometimes there's
all right.
it's a little
If
different.
that's the distinction between long and short term, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Veterinary practice and veterinarian hospital, you have two different categories on your list. They're sort of the same, only one of them is sort of a smaller scale than the other. And I don't know whether it makes a difference to you as to where they're permitted.
Well, again, I think if we're gonna make it this, I could see where maybe the hospital wouldn't be permitted in the village, but it would be permitted on 3A.
Yeah. Okay, so you may want to keep that distinction.
That's another one. Are we gonna split hairs between different uses? But it was actually the veterinary use that led to the land court case on, for the place on 3A.
No, it didn't go to land court. We just had to
Or
change.
whatever it was. It was because we had this microscopic distinction between uses.
Right.
Whether, look, the distinction seems to be whether it allows surgery or not.
Yeah,
I mean, that's,
Well, a veterinarian treats animals. There may be some minor surgery, but they, may treat them, give them shots or, X-ray bones or something like that. The veterinarian hospital is a larger scale operation. They can keep their patients there
Yeah.
overnight for longer periods of time.
yeah. And we can allow such a thing on 3A, but as a practical matter, we're not gonna get one because they're expensive to operate and we have two nearby in the region, so.
So then you get to open air businesses. And I made a distinction between those operations that you would have like a village district or in a standard suburban shopping center or something, to larger businesses. It'll probably be limited in where they're located. The automobile service station was the one that we talked about. Commercial greenhouse or garden center, you don't have anything listed for that, but I thought it's kind of a use that people, it's a retail use, but it's outside and it takes up a lot of space. And there's,
We have one and used to have two.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
What I don't see in this list that I
Yeah.
think, since COVID, we need to mention is outdoor dining. It doesn't fall under the entertainment definition, but
I have that as a part of the rest, as an outdoor, that would be an outdoor thing in the restaurant definition in bylaw, which wouldn't change.
yeah,
I think allows for the outdoor. It's on premises. Can be indoor or out, but we can make sure that that's clarified.
yeah,
Okay.
because we don't want to discourage that.
Right. Okay, now, I think you do have commercial parking lot on your list. Is there any reason you'd have a commercial parking lot that somebody would run and charge a fee to park?
No,
no,
So really, do you need it? I don't think so.
no, we used to have one for boats, but
Yeah.
that isn't operating anymore.
All right, so we'll take that out. The dealership is newer used trucks, motorcycles, house trailers, small aircraft. If you want to take that off, you can, and the like.
No, I would add boats, but,
Well, boats are in marina or boatyard.
oh,
Okay, because I thought you might.
but a retail, so
okay. That's fine.
So the dealership is the retail sale of.
Yeah, we haven't had a car dealership in ages, but.
You might.
No
Marina-
reason to exclude it, because, we're beggars can't be choosers on getting commercial development in this town, but we haven't had one.
Do you want to take off small aircraft off there or? Just
yeah, it seems like
unlikely, right?
we don't have an airport that's
Yeah,
nearby, so there'd be no place for anyone's land and
Right.
Yeah, take that.
All right, so marina or boatyard, and here we could put in marina, comma, boatyard, marine repair. So this is a commercial facility, so obviously anybody can have their own boats on their property. But this is commercial for sale, storage, rental, repair, docking, and refueling of boats. I mean, I guess the repair is already there.
Yeah.
Including the customary accessory uses such as the sale of marine parts and equipment. Commercial boat building is another type of use there, and storage, boat storage. So it would all be marina or boatyard type of use. Then open air wholesale business or storage would be the outside storage facility, the lumber yards, the contractor's yard, where everything is outside. Not junkyards.
And what is this a description for us in yellow, or would this be included as the text?
This is a question. I added this in. The use does not include junkyards or other facilities for the sale or storage of used auto parts. I mean, I think that's probably, since we prohibit that.
I think that makes sense to
Yeah,
leave,
I would leave most of these yellow things I'm seeing, I would leave in.
Okay.
but it was worded in such a way, and I wanted to make sure that Judge Cutler meant it to be text instead of a description for us.
It's text. It's part of the text. It's probably redundant since you prohibit this stuff anyway, but
Yeah.
you may want to add it in.
Does no harm.
Okay.
By the way, did we lose Cassie? This is the first time I've looked at the screen in a while.
I think back when she said something briefly.
Yeah, she
All right,
doesn't
well,
appear to be here.
Fine, let's just keep muddling through. We don't take any votes. That's
Right. Well, no, you're not going to vote. I'm really getting a
We don't
sense.
yeah, no, I know.
Forum.
I appreciate it. I just wish,
Outdoor entertainments would be, and I was trying to throw in miniature golf course, drive-in movie theater, or other open air place of entertainment, but not including amusement parks or racetracks. Now, I think your music fair place is that would probably fall under the outdoor entertainment,
Music
Yeah.
circus, yeah.
the music circus, right?
Yeah.
Outdoor sports facility or club, and this is
except with our music circus, it would end up being a prohibited use because it's in a residential district, but it's grandfathered. But if somebody wanted to relocate it to 3A, knock yourselves out, you know.
okay. All right. Okay. So it's just not in that district, right?
Yeah, it's you know, it's in RB right now.
I lumped together golf club, country club, riding stables, you know, any of those kind of outdoor athletic facilities, all in one.
Mention specifically yacht club and sailing club since we have one. One
Okay.
of each. We have one of each, actually.
Okay. And sailing clubs.
Although, well, yeah, I mean, as a practical matter, they're only going to be on the harbor anyway, but
Right. It's just a category of uses.
yeah.
If the land doesn't accommodate it, that's
We
different.
don't have a sportsman club. We have one next door.
Like a rifle, is that like a rifle?
Yeah, you can hear the guns from my backyard on a Sunday morning.
Pet daycare. I threw this in, pet daycare and pet boarding. This is the new use since COVID. Everybody has a dog and everybody needs to put them in daycare because they're not home anymore, working remotely. And I don't know if this is a use you want in town or whether you want to just forget about it.
If it's commercially operated, that's fine. I don't want to see these things sprouting up in people's houses.
No, no, you would only allow it in commercial districts.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's a necessary service, so.
Yeah. All right.
There is one on Cedar Street, Tom. Past the
Yeah,
dump.
yeah, which would be, it's a kennel and it's another grandfathered use.
So kennel is a term, usually a kennel is a boarding place where you not only keep dogs, but you breed them and raise them. And if you do, that's an agricultural use.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
We just have one of those and but again, it's probably in a place where it will be a prohibited use, but it's grandfathered where it is.
okay. Light industrial uses, I guess there's less light industrial uses, but the enclosed wholesale business or storage as opposed to the outdoor business and storage. Light manufacturing, and I've got a pretty detailed definition of that you may want to take a look at.
Yeah. We're not going to get it, but I wouldn't discourage the development.
That you have a bunch of uses on your use table list that I kind of lumped together for all of this. You have different kinds of manufacturing listed.
Yeah.
And
Good.
just kind of grouped it together. And here's the repair garage. And I just saw this as a larger scale repair. And maybe it's not just motor vehicles, not just automobiles, but it might be trucks, it might be construction equipment or whatever. And I could see that in industrial use area. And then finally, a research and development laboratory, which I don't think you have anything specifically that addresses that.
No.
Well, what's an example of an R&D lab?
Oh, it could be anything from computer stuff to medical research,
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
chemistry research. Again, you're not, it's research and applied research, but you're not creating things or developing anything more than prototypes or examples. But that may be something beyond what Cohasset wants. I just didn't know.
Yeah, that's like if we created a mini Kendall Square.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
could be a
those are the
high-
kind. That's where it is. There may be some of these on Libby Parkway in South Weymouth, but it's,
yeah.
I'm
No.
thinking of places around Kendall Square, and what are the chances that we'd ever get it, and should we allow it? Maybe
I mean,
invite it.
if a large corporation wanted to do something like this, they would have to go to town meeting and get the bylaw changed to allow it. That's all.
So very often R&D labs show up around schools, universities,
University.
hospitals that already have a large infrastructure that's related.
Not necessarily, they can be independent. I'm trying to think if there's, most of what I think of is maybe more high-tech stuff.
Yeah, I think there's places along 128 that probably have these uses that you wouldn't think are near a hospital or anything, or a school.
Yeah, but then it does bring in, oh my God, it's biomedicine, research, people going to be cloning animals and stuff like that. I suppose that could raise people's concerns.
Well, I mean, it's the word laboratory, right? Because if you said R&D and high tech, then everyone would kind of know what that is. It's really office space, really.
So if you put that, yeah. So, okay, so that's a question maybe to ask at a forum.
Yeah.
If people are really interested.
A think tank.
I mean,
Tank lab.
related to this, I do want to have a forum to kind of roll out these ideas earlier rather than, wait till the fall. So,
Make sure we covered all the bases.
yeah.
And then I kind of lumped together the energy and telecommunication uses.
Good.
And I noticed you don't have a particular bylaw regulating telecommunication towers replacement. And I don't think it's as big and sexy an issue as it was probably 20 years ago when they were building all those towers. And the technology certainly has changed, and maybe they aren't anymore. So we could leave well enough alone and just know that if you don't regulate it and it's governed, it may be exempt under the Telecommunications Act. They, may be very limited in how you can control it. Some towns years ago put in overlay districts where they particularly said, if you're going to put up, telecommunications tower, it's got to be in this area and no place else, and by special permit. But if you have never regulated it, and clearly no one's ever come to the town to ask for it. I don't think you have to. put
No,
it.
but
Every church steeple in
well,
town has
let's not throw it out yet, because, you know, especially when you get towards the harbor, the telecommunications stinks. So I wouldn't want to discourage people from coming in, but you know, where it was, I mean, you know.
And it doesn't have to be a tower. You could say they could go on buildings. as
No,
an-
yeah, and we could tell them that they have to decorate it up, like make it look like a tree or make it look like a
They
steeple.
don't.
or something.
They never do.
Yeah, they never really look like a tree. A lot
No,
of
I know,
church
but you know what I'm
steeples,
saying, but you know, we do have coverage issues in certain parts
church,
that we
a
should.
lot of our church steeples in town have
Oh, okay. That's, yeah,
boosting equipment in them,
right,
and you'd never know.
right.
Yeah, let's leave it there for the moment,
The
but
question mark, okay. Okay, so we would include in that the wind energy conversion and the ground mounted solar energy as principal uses. In the solar energy, we would also list that as an accessory use, because there's smaller scale ones that could be accessory to homes or businesses. So that would be a separate category. It wouldn't be in an overlay district.
I'm sorry, I just missed that.
Oh, okay, so the solar energy facilities,
Yeah.
you allow them only in a very small overlay district right now,
Right.
yeah,
town-owned land essentially. My concern when we send this in to the state for review, if it passes, is the first thing that's gonna come back is they have lately been introducing their own judgment on these things rather than just giving warnings that it might be to a district that's too small. Sometimes they'll just reject it outright and say, no, that's too small. So what we want to make sure is that we allow enough opportunities for solar energy facilities throughout the town. They may not be large scale, they may not be subject to the same kind of restrictions and special permit requirements as in the solar energy district. But these may not be ground mounted unless they're very small in the backyard or something. Could be roof mounted, could be,
yeah, we have to refine the bylaw to specifically allow the stuff on houses, even though they're allowed today. And
right,
I'm all in favor of expanding where the larger facilities can go.
yeah, yeah. And
But-
maybe they're intermediate facilities that you allow by special permits. Sometimes I know one town allowed them on, you know, some people have like a deck over their parking lot or something, so it's covered
Yep.
parking space on
Sure.
in an industrial park or something, and
Yeah.
they'll raise on top of that.
There's,
So there
there's a house in Norwell on the way to my office that has a big array in its yard, but it's got like a triple lot. It's a giant lot, but it's a residential house.
Yeah.
And, you know, for the unique places where property is large enough, we should allow that.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
should allow a big ground mounted display. You know, it's not as big as the commercial scale ones, but it's pretty good size. And when you drive by, you notice it because it's now a new structure facing the street, you know.
Yeah.
But
But
wouldn't-
single
I wouldn't
family
res-
residential systems should be allowed as of right.
yeah, that I'm
Talking about
thinking,
larger systems that would be regulated and
Yes.
correct. I think we would allow the rooftop stuff. And then if somebody does have the land that they want to do like this place on River Street in Norwell, then, you know, maybe a special permit for that because it is it's a rather large structure. So,
Yeah. Okay, so I can give you some options for that when I get to the accessory regulations.
Yeah.
So I also, as we got into so then we have the table of principal uses, which are basically going to use the layout that Tom, you have suggested. And we'll kind of fill in the blanks and figure out what's allowed where. The special principal use regulations, these are the ones that have requirements in the bylaw that you want to make sure get covered. The mandatory inclusionary dwelling units, and this needs some reworking and rethinking at some point.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of people who've talked about this, you know, and given me ideas about this with, especially with the fees in lieu, which I think in the way I drafted it was simply making it like a hierarchy of which we would prefer to see.
Right.
You know,
So
because
what's
encouraging.
unclear though is how is this, I mean, how is this administered? And, you know, it just says in any residential development containing more than 5 dwelling units. Does that mean in any subdivision of more than 5? Does that
Yep.
just mean in a multifamily
Yeah,
development?
subdivision, yes,
Anything.
and a multifamily project. Yeah,
Okay.
and a mixed use project.
Yeah, and if we have to be, if we say any residential development, including mixed use, subdivision,
Yeah,
multifamily, you know, the definitions that we have,
okay,
you know, just to make sure that captures everything.
right. And so if somebody subdivides land, I don't know how much subdivision you get, but suppose somebody comes in and they
Not much.
subdivide their land into 5 lots, but they have no intention of building any houses. They're just gonna sell off lots one by one. How do you apply this?
Yeah, it would have to be a part of the original subdivision approval, although we haven't had this issue to deal with. I mean, we
Yeah, 'cause I
haven't
can
gotten the
see if you're
subdivision in.
building-
Yeah, yeah, I think if they go under the subdivision control law, we just have to condition it and maybe have to make that
I don't
change
think
noted in
you
the
can't. You
chapter
can't.
3.
I don't think you can. I
You
don't think you can,
You're
because
saying
again,
inclusionary zoning doesn't work for a subdivision because they
It-
conflict.
if it's a special permit kind of subdivision, like if it was a cluster development or something like that, where you are giving something up for a by right, so
Oh, all
So-
right, I get it. So in our
Yeah.
cluster development bylaw, we could put it in density bonus with inclusionary zoning,
right, right.
Okay. or we can't just flat out put it in the chapter
I don't see
325 of the bylaw.
See how you can, because particularly if you have someone who's maybe not even a developer, it might just be a local landowner who, you know, hires the engineer and says, draw me up a subdivision plan and let's get it approved and filed, and I'm going to be selling these lots over the next 20 years. How do you decide, you know, which of the lots is going to be inclusionary and
Yeah, no, I get it. It's a problem, but that's the loophole. That's how we always fall behind.
Right. I know way back, I mean, this is going back into the 1980s. Concord tried to do that, and they actually adopted a town bylaw that operated for years until it was finally challenged about 20 years later, in which they said if you develop a subdivision of 5 lots or more, you have to reserve one of those lots for purchase by the town for affordable housing purposes at fair market value. And I don't know if they ever actually got the land, you know, had to be reserved for 3 years or something like that. I think ultimately it was determined that that was in conflict with the subdivision control law.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should find out and further define that.
Anyway, I don't want to keep us all night, but I'm glad we're getting through some detail, but.
We're almost done. I think we have
No,
just
but then also in this section, which isn't here, this is where I think the special uses, this is where I would envision accessory dwelling going.
well, that's going to go under accessory use regulations.
Oh, do you have a different, oh, okay.
Right. So this is almost
You gotta
done.
keep going.
Right.
All
So
right, the
medical
village, the
marijuana
village
agreement
zoning might go in
is
here.
taken from your current bylaw, and
Yeah,
probably the needle 2 word changes in that. And that's a long one. And then we get to accessory use regulations, which I haven't totally drafted. I've just done the general and the special, and I got it started with the special accessory use regulations. So under those, you're going to have the home occupation use, the bed and breakfast, and I don't see a difference between the establishment and the other bed and breakfast. I mean, they're really one and the same.
Right.
You probably want to treat them the same. Accessory dwelling units. I added in here small scale or mid-scale solar energy systems.
Right.
okay.
That's a possibility. Personal kennel. And I think you you have a limitation on that. You can't keep more than a certain number of dogs on the residential premises as pets. Family home daycare, which you may permit either by special permit or by right. This is somebody operating a very small scale family daycare out of their home. So that's a question. This is not a use you have to allow, like you do have to allow regular daycare centers.
Right.
So that's a
And
question.
you could put the limit, a limit of the number of children or adults.
There's a limit under the state law,
Yeah, okay.
like 3 or 4 kids or something at most. The hardship cultivation of medical marijuana, you don't have it as an accessory use, but it sounds like it's an accessory use. It's not a principal use of land, right? If it's the hardship for the person who needs it, who has to grow it for themselves.
Yeah.
Not
Right?
sure.
I wasn't there when you passed it, but I'll do a little more research, but I'm pretty sure it relates to an individual who needs the medical marijuana for their own purposes. It's not,
Then they would have to have all kinds of prescriptions and state
Yeah.
permits for that stuff.
right. So that's an accessory use that we have to deal with. Guest house, you allow guest houses as an accessory use,
Yes, and
right?
we'll
It's
see.
sometimes controversial mixed up with the accessory dwelling unit.
Well, you got to
Maybe.
make the distinction. A guest house is more temporary. It could be for relatives, it could be for friends, it could be renting out on a temporary basis, but you
Yeah.
probably want to limit it to non-monetary. It's really a guest who's staying there and not a paying guest like a short, vacation rental.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Operation.
sometimes they start out as one thing and they end up as something else. And whether a deed restriction is really a good idea or not, and it seems like the guest house and accessory dwelling unit might be almost the same thing.
We might merge
So
the
they
two.
might be looked at together holistically, along with the kind of short-term rental situation.
Well, they're two different things, but the
Well,
short-term rental is different from an actual accessory dwelling unit in terms of its impact.
I
on the neighborhood.
understand it, but these types, I think, probably need to be looked at holistically and
Yeah,
with eyes open on
Right.
what the pros and cons are of each.
Well, the survey tried to address these distinctions, and we'll see what, I'm going to assume that the public's going to want to see them all because it's going on right now, so. But we'll see.
you have private helicopter landing areas.
I would get rid of that,
You want to get rid of that?
yeah.
Okay.
Judge Cutler, can I just ask a quick question? Going back to the personal kennel of no more than 4 dogs,
Mhm.
whereas in the animal portion of the bylaw, they specify fees for more than 4 dogs, is that going to be an issue with a conflict?
I don't know. I'll have to look at that. You mean in the general bylaw
Yes,
for licensing?
yes.
Well, that wouldn't necessarily be personal because that would be applied to a commercial.
It just generally lists it as kennel license fee. It doesn't specify commercial or
So the fee
personal.
would apply depending upon the number of dogs, but if you're limited in the number of dogs, that's all you can have. So. that's all you
Okay, just making sure.
Well, whatever change we make, we can always do a part 2 to the article that changes the general bylaw as
We
it
have
needs
to.
be. If the general bylaw just needs to reference commercial use, that's fine.
Yeah.
We can make that change. It's an easy one.
Common driveways, do you want to put that in
No.
here as an accessory use, or you want to leave it in the?
I want to put all the driveway and access and parking in one article.
Okay. Electric charging stations,
Absolutely.
absolutely, right?
Yeah.
Drive-through service windows as an accessory use, and this could be by special
Yeah,
permit.
I think we should define all of these things, and the question is, where are we going to allow them to be used or not used?
Standalone ATMs,
Same thing. And
okay,
we already have one, so I guess the horse is out of the barn on that one too.
okay. And then seasonal and short-term rental, we've got to sort of tie that in, right?
We'll see what the public says
Okay.
about that.
Then I have a list.
It's funny how many of those things are now popping up on Cohasset 143, our main Facebook page. I mean, the practice is going on, so like I said, I don't expect anybody to suggest we prohibit it.
Right,
We might just have to define it better.
exactly, and limit it, right. Trailers and mobile homes, you already allow that as a temporary use. Okay. Yard sales, you don't mention, do you want to just forget about that and just let people do what they're gonna do?
I don't.
Okay. Christmas tree or other seasonal outdoor sales, is that an issue
Do we want to put it in there?
as an accessory use?
You know what, I mean, it's a seasonal retail use. I don't know if we have to micromanage that, but.
Is
Only
it,
that only that the retail stores are inside.
All
And
right, yeah, all right, mention that one, yard sales, no, but,
temporary unenclosed storage of building supplies and equipment. Is that necessary? Like if you're constructing a building or something and you want to,
I would ask John Hallen that, but I'll bet you he'd say it would be an enforcement nightmare.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Okay. And then fairs, bazaars, antique shows, fundraising, suppers and dances. Those are the events you've been talking about. Do you want to say that they're an allowed accessory use to certain things and put some limits on it, or you just want to let it go?
I
I
mean,
think it
they're
does
big,
no harm to identify them and then decide which resident, whether they should be allowed in all areas, all resident, all zoning districts or just some.
yeah, I mean, the big one that we just had, and that happens on town property.
Oh, then
So,
that's different. That's
you know, it happens on the common. There's other things that happen on the common. Kids fair,
right.
Halloween fair, Christmas fair.
Right.
You know,
But I
but those
think-
are all happening. I mean, I think we could say all those things that are okay on town property and maybe.
Or church property or school property.
Yeah, really, you know,
Yeah.
institutional.
Because these are
properties.
fundraising type events as opposed to a commercial event. So you have a big barn on your property and you renovate
Well,
it.
yeah, that's what Holly Hill Farm does.
That's
They
a
have-
different, that's really not allowed. That's a commercial
Well, yeah,
That's a
I mean,
operation.
maybe we say things of this sort, you know, yeah, define it, and then when we get to the table, they're allowed as a right on town property or institutional property, and, you know, I'd hate to start burdening Holly Hill Farm and some other places with special permits, but maybe that's what we do. I mean, you know, I'm trying to think of other places in town that
Maybe
have
just
any.
a temporary permit that they could do it.
Yeah,
3
I don't know
times
too
a
many
year.
other places in town that do this stuff, but.
Well, some people, you know, you don't know that they do. They
Right.
just do. And I have a great house for weddings, you know, I have a great
Well,
backyard.
yeah. I mean, I've been to some people's big houses and it's been a town Democratic Party fundraiser, but you know, and the Republican Party does it too. They have their barbecue every year at somebody's
You can
house.
ignore it if it's not an issue and you don't want to, you know, if you haven't had any enforcement issues.
Yeah, I don't think it's been abused, and the really big ones are happening on town property.
Right.
Or, you know, I don't know, has the Music Circus ever had a car show? Maybe, you know, that would be an ideal place for an antique car show, but I don't think they've even done it. But if it happened there, I don't think anybody would care.
Well, that would be something the building inspector would simply make a call. Is this an accessory use to the
Yeah.
use that's there? Okay, all right, so we'll take that out. Okay, so that's where I am. I'm working on the accessory uses. I've been starting to work on the accessory dwelling unit. I've got some notes and stuff that I want to share with you all. And I'll probably send that to you next week, but also I'm just continuing to write this stuff and hopefully get it to you in the next 2 weeks so that you can discuss it at your next meeting.
All right, well, so regarding this, the planning board, like I said, has nothing to do. So
They
I
should be
have,
looking at this.
I'm holding them to their July 12th meeting just to go over what we've discussed tonight. Because again, this time around, I wanted to keep the planning board more up to speed on what's going on rather than wait till the vetting process at the end.
Right.
So if it's just what we have here, that's fine. It'll engender some discussion. If you have a more refined product before the 12th, great. And then I'd like to roll this out to the public, like end of July, beginning of August. I know it's a lousy time, July probably better than August. And just say, look, here's a draft, here's what we're looking at. You know, the theory we've always told you is simplification over what we have.
Mhm.
What do you think? Are there uses we should be allowing? Are there uses we shouldn't be allowing that we're allowing now? Or should we be anticipating some use in the future? You know, I think this is beyond like a survey and a mailing kind of thing. We probably won't get a lot of people, but we'll get the usual suspects. But I think maybe we should shoot for that.
All right. So as I say, if I can get the accessory stuff to you in mid-July, then you can discuss it.
Yeah, the planning board meeting's the 12th, but we can go forward. Clark and I can explain this, what was here tonight to the planning board,
right.
and tell them what else is coming. And, we always have the opportunity to update them.
Right. So when is this?
Well,
next?
that's just it. I since we didn't have a big attendance tonight, I want to poll everybody, but
Mhm.
the planning board is the 12th and the what is it, Cassandra, the 26th?
Yes, the
All
26th.
right, the 26th, we're probably going to cancel unless something comes up. So I'm tentatively thinking in my head for this committee, Monday, the 10th. And either the Monday or Wednesday, that last week in July, but that also might be that might be a good place for a forum that week.
It would be good if we could, it would be good if we had it pretty much settled on what you wanted to put out for the public by the end.
Yeah, all right. Well, that's fine. I mean, the timing of the public in the summer is never going to be good, so I'm not going to worry about that. So let me
I don't think
circulate.
we need a public forum for what Judge Cutler is working on now. I mean, I think if we had some existing conditions modeling or some comparisons of zoning changes, some analysis, that might be it might draw a crowd or interest. But I mean, I think that
Yeah, all right.
like most of these things, the housekeeping work, the organization,
That's not-
it's not the stuff of long nights and
Yeah, no, that's fine. I get it. And
I don't think we need a forum for it. I
No,
mean,
all right,
keeping
that's
the
fine.
planning board up to speed and updated the selectmen and maybe the ZBA. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Public
I agree.
We want to spend our public forum time wisely and on
Yeah, I agree.
the issues with substance.
Yeah, the surveys too are addressing what I think are the key subjects, which are the ADUs, the short-term rentals, and in particular, based on the hearing we had recently in the planning board of the harbor, the survey about the harbor says, is there any use you'd want to prohibit in the harbor?
Mhm.
Because, the long-term proposal, what we heard was that we're going to have another, small boutique hotel, but a hotel's been allowed use for 40 or 50 years. So it didn't make the fishermen in the crowd happy, but, it's been an allowed use for 50 years. So I think it's worthwhile asking the public if there's something in the harbor they would not want to see. I mean, we can only, we encourage marine uses, but we can't get somebody to open up a business. We can just create the groundwork to allow it to happen. All right, that's fine. So, we're looking at, possibly the 10th.
Mhm.
We're going to discuss this with the planning board on the 12th. The planning board, that'll be the planning board's probably only meeting in July. And then for this committee, possibly that last week of July, either the Monday or the Wednesday.
Okay.
Tentatively, but I want to poll everybody since we could, we don't have a quorum at the moment, so we got to make sure everybody is. I don't know, you were going to Italy, Judge?
Oh, not until October.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh,
No,
at crunch time you're leaving.
No.
We'll be in shape by then,
I
but
don't know what more I would have for you by the 10th, except maybe the questions that I have about the ADUs. I have a number of questions and issues that would be really helpful for the committee to.
Yeah, the thing about the ADUs, when we had the forum back in the winter, I mean, Clark and Woody put forward, there's one simple change for what we think is prohibiting its use now, and it's about changing the
Exterior.
outside look of the house, the exterior of the house. The survey is going to tell us really what other direction we're going to go in. So,
Okay.
but if we allow it now in outbuildings and we change the height of the outbuildings, fine. I think those are going to be relatively easy changes to make, but.
So I will, yeah, so
I just wanted to keep the planning board up to speed, and this
What
is.
were you going to say, Judge Cutler?
oh, no, I was just following up on what Tom said. So I said I'm glad to send you my list of questions, so you'll have them before the 10th, and then you can give them to the planning board if you're going to be discussing
Yeah,
ADU. Again, it brings up the very issues that you were talking about is, do we allow changes to the exterior? Do we allow a small addition? Do we allow them in outbuildings? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, okay.
All righty.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm
No,
sorry.
thank you for all your work. I appreciate
Very
it.
dense discussion. And, feel free to pick at it at your leisure if you have questions, comments, and concerns, and same with you, Cassandra. And as I said, if you could share this with John, that would be great, and ask him if he has any issues that he wants to make sure that we are aware of.
Yeah, I'm gonna send him this version tomorrow, just so he can look it over and see if anything catches his eye.
That would be great. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and particularly if he points out things that he thinks are going to be an enforcement problem, but.
Exactly.
No, but he has to realize that when you
Right.
talk to a lot of people in this town, there's a perception of enforcement issues, at least in the past. I'm not putting that on John, but that's a wide-ranging perception in lots of towns. So, we have to balance between his workload and actually, having a bylaw that means something too. So. All right, Clark, it's just you and I. You want to move to adjourn? I'll second it.
So moved.
Yeah, second, okay, so.
I'm in
thank you
favor.
all. Yeah, I'll send out a little questionnaire about when to meet, just to confirm, but we'll shoot for the 10th.
All right.
Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Happy
Good
New,
night.
happy 4th.
Yep, you too.
All right,
night.
bye.